This is an ad by BetterHelp. Every January brings you 365 blank pages waiting to be filled. What do you want your 2025 story to be? Therapy can be your editorial partner, helping you craft the next chapters with purpose. BetterHelp offers therapy 100% online, with a diverse network of over 30,000 therapists worldwide. Visit BetterHelp.com today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the press. Great to have you here this week as we dig into the first full field event of the year. It's the Sony Open in Hawaii. I'm Ryan Ballingy. Thanks for being here. We're going to go over the tournament. We'll talk about the course. We'll talk about the field. We'll go over model results. We'll talk about first round plays for the week for the Sony Open in Hawaii. So, without further ado, let's get into the tournament after a quick recap of the century. Hideki Matsuyama set the PGA Tour record against par in a 72-hole tournament, 35 under total. Winds up winning the century by 3 over Colin Morikawa. We talked about Hideki Matsuyama last week, did very well in our model. Didn't pick him to win outright. That probably should have been slapping us right in the face, but historically has been great at the tournament. Colin Morikawa was the obvious pick there. He has never finished worse than 7th, and that trend continues in this tournament. Thomas Dietrich had a good week. We did talk about Thomas Dietrich. Talked about Jake Knapp. He did not have such a great week, but we talked about him as a potential kind of fun pick whose value was better than maybe the field indicated. But we also know that first-time players at the Century don't tend to do as well as those with experience. We saw that in the end results on Sunday with Sungjae Im, who's a regular at this tournament, also doing well, finishing in solo third place. So, that all said, let's spin it forward to the Sony Open in Hawaii. And this is the first full field event of the year on the schedule. And what makes this tournament really interesting is it's such a difference from what you see at Kapalua, right? Kapalua is long and par 73 and wide and big targets and relatively slow surfaces. You have to score. You have to go super low. You got to think about 30 under. Par is basically 68 there, 68 and a half. If you want to keep up with the field, you got to be in under that number all 4 days to have a chance. It's different at the Sony Open in Hawaii. The winning score tends to be around 20 under par, which if you took 3 strokes away from Kapalua's par, you'd be right around that number, right? But getting to that 20 under number is a little bit different. And the golf course that, the second course in a row we're playing in Hawaii, move to Honolulu, we go to Waialae Country Club, and it's a 1927 Seth Rayner. I mean, it is a golf course that was in the absolute golden age, the first golden age of golf course architecture. It is 7,044 yards. The course is not any different from the 2024 card. You got a par 5 on each side instead of having multiple par 5s on a side. And this is a golf course that tends to reward ball strikers, tends to reward players who play really well from tee to green and then just kind of have a hard time making putts. But they wind up hitting it close enough because the targets are small, they leave themselves shorter putts, and they can score well. So you've got an $8.7 million purse, $1.566 million to the winner. You've got 500 FedEx Cup points to the winner here as well this week instead of 700 compared to last week. We have a pretty decent field for this tournament. You've got really at the top, obviously, Hideki Matsuyama because he won last week, so he's going to be your headliner. But he's still part of the field, at least for now. You had him at 10-1. And then after that, you get into a really interesting field of ball strikers heavy on the odds table. So let's go down that board right now. So Corey Connors, who had a very nice week at Kapalua, is 14-1. You got Ben On, who lost here in a playoff last year to Grayson Murray. He's 20-1 along with Tom Kim and Russell Henley. Russell Henley has done well here in the past. Probably one of your better horse for course plays of the week, which we'll get to. Keegan Bradley, 22-1, had himself a pretty nice week at Kapalua as well. And he was in the playoff here last year along with Ben On, 3-person playoff. He's 22-1, has a good track record in this tournament, including a couple of 12th place finishes in the last 5 years to go with that P2 from last year. Maverick McNealy is 28-1. Want to come back to him. I think he's an interesting case this week. Bob McIntyre, Siwoo Kim, a past champion, they're 30-1. JT Poston and Sahith Theegala are 33-1. Want to hone in a little bit on JT Poston, who was 6th here last year. Did not have the best week at Kapalua, despite some decent prior results, a couple of top 15 finishes in his prior 2 starts at Kapalua. But as we've said before, and I'll say this about Sahith Theegala as well, they tend to do their best work on tighter golf courses. That seems to be the case for Tom Kim as well, who's obviously got wins at Las Vegas on a desert golf course that plays narrower, right? Not as wide looking compared to your average PGA Tour course. JT Poston has victories in Las Vegas. I mean, he's done well plenty of places. John Deere's a little bit tighter. He's done well there. Sahith Theegala's schedule, if you look at his results, he tends to do well in tighter golf courses, not on wider ones, which I think is kind of interesting, although he does have the imagination of a player that really makes that possible, right? He wants to hit the harder shots. Well, you tend to get the harder shots when there's nothing, there's something in front of you. There's something in the way. And that's a golf course like this one. Austin Eckroat, Kurt Kitayama, Taylor Pendrith, all 35-1. Pendrith had a great week at Kapalua, made an albatross, the 8th of his lifetime, by the way, first in a tournament, but 8th of his lifetime on Sunday at the Century, first in tournament history. And then 40s and 45s, Brian Harmon, Davis Thompson, Luke Clinton, the amateur, is in the field this week, finished co-runner-up, had himself a chance to win the RSM in his last opportunity on the PGA Tour. He is close enough to play this week that if he can get a good finish, he can have accelerated PGA Tour points that would get him a card pretty much right away. So that would put him in position to have a PGA Tour card as soon as he declares as a professional. That's why he's here. That's why the opportunity is there. He is a great player. He shows out well on the model. He's got a relatively small sample size, so that's got to be weighted a little differently. But 40-1 tells you what the books think of his opportunity to win here. Ben Griffin is 45-1. Want to underscore him a lot. Played very well to end of the year. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. And then Harry Hall, who had himself a nice week at Kapalua, is 45-1. His best work tends to be on these shorter, narrower golf courses. I think about his run at Colonial a few years ago, although he did win the ISCO championship in Kentucky on a golf course that was fairly wide, fairly long. So take that for what you will. Let's move over to our look at horses for courses for the week, right? We tend to kind of think about things on 2 different planes when we're talking about tournaments, right? Trying to pick out outright winners. We're looking at guys who have a good course history. We're looking at guys who have been playing pretty well. We don't really have as much data about guys who are playing well recently because you had a big gap between the FedEx Cup fall, who participated in it, when it was played, compared to recently. So even if you looked at guys who had a really nice fall, like Matt McNeely or Matt McCarty, Ben Griffin comes to mind, right? He had top 15 finishes in the final 2 events of his season, including 8th place in Bermuda, place that's tight, place he likes. But how much value those things have in the fields that they played against and when they played them, those are kind of diminishing returns, right? So when I'm talking about one and done picks for the first few weeks of the year, I don't even talk about current form for most of these players because you don't know what you've got with a 6-week break or 7-week break, or even for the guys that played a lot of golf in that fall period against weaker competition. You really don't know what you have. I think about like a Joe Highsmith. Do you question to a degree what Matt McCarty's win means because it wasn't against the best field at Black Desert? Do you feel the same way about Matt McNeely? Maybe not, because that was probably the best field of the fall outside of the Zozo at Sea Island. So you got to think about those things a little bit, but I don't talk too much about current form in these first couple of tournaments of the year. So let's focus on the horses for courses, players who have multiple top 15 finishes in this tournament in the last 5 years. The 3 guys that probably come right to mind are Russell Henley, Keegan Bradley, and Corey Connors. Corey Connors has been part of the story here 3 of the last 4 years. Keegan Bradley, 3 of the last 5. Russell Henley practically every time he plays, but maybe a couple in his entire career. Hideki has won here. I think if you're trying to pick off Hideki once again, I think it's a foolish bet to bet him at 10-1. It's really hard to win once on the PGA Tour. It's even harder to go back-to-back. It's even harder to go back-to-back when 2 courses that are very different like this. I know he has a good track record here, and I'm sure he'll show out well, but it takes a lot out of you to win, and I think any kind of expectation that he's going to contend to win here is probably misplaced given the price. You could think he's going to do well. You can pick him for your one and done leagues, your fantasy teams, all that stuff. All that's fine. But to put good hard currency to work at a 10-1 number on a guy who was 22-1 last week and is probably dead tired, I don't know if that's a good investment. Ben On's been close here a number of times. Obviously, playoff last year, a couple of other top 15 finishes in this tournament. He's playing the best golf of his life the last couple of years. He's really figured out something, how to manage himself on the tour, how to use his ball striking to his advantage to mitigate what is his worst skill, which is putting, and to put himself in a reasonable position to win, or at least top 15 a whole lot, get himself in the big money tournaments, get himself in the majors, all those types of things. Nick Taylor's another horse for course here. I don't want to kind of make any jump to conclusions, go to, okay, well, if you're Canadian, you play well here, so let's pick Taylor Pendrith. I don't want you to do that. Nick Taylor and Corey Connors are their own cases. They're their own people. But Nick Taylor does have a good track record in this tournament. Mac Hughes, for what it's worth, another Canadian player, seemed very excited to play here this week. Doesn't have the best record here, but does have a decent finish. Chris Kirk also has played well in this tournament. Did not play particularly well at the Century for his title defense. Again, won as a long shot last year, kind of started a trend of very shocking winners. Grayson Murray was 500-1 last year to win this tournament. But, and that leads us into the history of this tournament, if you're looking at players who win here, you tend to kind of get players outside of Grayson Murray in that 20 to 50 range, maybe 30 to 50 range, depending on where they are. Siwoo Kim kind of won this thing out of nowhere, but again, great ball striker, plays well on these kind of narrow golf courses. So that's not all that shocking. Cam Smith's kind of the opposite. Not a good driver of the golf ball, great short game. You get that with Russell Henley, too, as a past champion here. Then you've got Jimmy Walker, who's won here a couple of times, was not the best short game player, was a great ball striker. You have Kevin Na, who has no substantial length whatsoever, but man, he's got an incredible short game, and he hit the ball lights out that week. Patton Kizzaire's done well here. Matt Kuchar's done well here. Guys who are not great putters. None of these players are particularly long, really. I mean, not by modern standards. So you can be pretty much any kind of player and win here. There's not a certain archetype, but you got to strike the ball well and you got to stick it close. I mean, proximity to the pin is a big thing here this week, and the targets get a lot smaller compared to Kapalua. A couple things to point out about past champions and course history for what it's worth. 5 of the last 9 Sony Opens went to a playoff. This is a tight tournament. It is typically down to the wire. Usually comes down to the 71st and 72nd holes to determine a champion. And most of the time in the last decade, basically, that hasn't even been enough. You've gone extra holes. So if you find yourself playing 18 again for the 73rd hole of the tournament, don't be surprised if you're a player in the field this week that has a chance to win. Also something worth noting, and this trend has a different value to it now because the Century not only has winners from last season, but also the top 50 in the FedEx Cup from the prior season. But there's long been a trend of this tournament that Sony Open winners tend, not always, but tend to play the week prior. You knock the rust off. You've been competing. You've competed against great players. You get to a field like this. There's no coming off of vacation. There's no ring rust, none of that type of stuff. So that is something to think about when you're thinking about players to like this week. Now let's get into the model. Top 10 for our model that we do each and every week for the PGA Tour. These are outright models, as I've explained before and keep explaining. The model that I do looks at 1 and 2 year windows of PGA Tour performance, and that looks at strokes gained in the raw, but also strokes gained multiplied by the quality of your competition as measured by the official World Golf Ranking. That gives us a figure we call quality strokes gained. Then we look at your performance in the last 10 PGA Tour events and your performance in this tournament in the last 3 years. And then we put all that together, and that gets you our model. So let's look over the top 10 this week, and then we'll talk about some potential limitations of the model in the early part of the season, particularly for this event. So number 1, Hideki Matsuyama. That's not surprising at all. Past winner here, won last week. Just had a great year last year. Corey Connors is number 2. Consistent ball striker, plays well, gains a lot of strokes, lots of high finishes. Keegan Bradley is 3rd. Again, makes sense. Not quite as good of a ball striker as Corey Connors, but puts himself in position a lot, and also gets a big boost from good finishes last year, including a win at the BMW. Matt McNealy is 4th. Again, great ball striker. I think he is a very good fit for this golf course. Again, if you think about RSM, host course, right? Seaside at Sea Island, shorter golf course, narrower golf course, not huge targets. I think that's a great guy to look at this week. I think the value play of the week, if you can get him soon enough, he is Ben Griffin, 45-1, 50-1, depending on the book. He's probably gonna be 40 or 35 by the end of this. He's gonna be bet pretty hard this week because of those 2 8th and 15th place finishes to end the fall. He was great throughout the fall. Tends to play well in these narrower golf courses. I can see that. Siwoo Kim is 6th. I think he's an interesting play. He wins so sporadically, though, it's hard to play him. Maybe you like him on a top 10 or 20 instead if you want less exposure to him. But I could see him playing very well this week. Mediocre in the field last week. That's kind of to be expected. But he had a really great finish to last year. Played great in the end of the summer. Played great in the fall where he did play. But again, talked about this earlier. If you are trying to extrapolate future performance based on something that happened 3, 4, 5 months ago, it's hard to do. It's hard to do reliably. So do you take that T32 from last week at Kapalua, or do you take what you saw over the summer and a limited amount in the fall? This is a longer term model, so that's going to give you the answer that my perspective, right? Lucas Glover's 7th. I think that's kind of surprising to me. He still gets credit in the model for the back-to-back wins. He is a great ball striker. He is a truly atrocious putter. So that's something to consider here this week. Russell Henley is 8th. Really just a great all-around player. Just tons of top 10s, 15s, and 20s. I would like him on a 10 or a 20 here this week. Maybe an each-way bet. It's harder to do here in the United States, but you can get a win and a top 5, place them in the equal amount, or a win and a top 10. Occasional book. Bet Rivers does this. Will offer you a win plus a top 8, 2 bets together, so you don't have to do them separately. The true each-way bet. Really good guy to look at for this week. Taylor Pendrith comes in 9th in the model, which that a little bit surprising, but played well recently. Had a great year last year. He moves the ball, obviously. I don't know that this is the best fit for him. I'm not convinced that it is. But in terms of overall performance against the field in the longer term, he's right in there. Ben On is 10th. I don't think that should surprise anybody. He comes out 10th a lot of the time. 10th, 13th, 17th in a lot of fields. In fields like this, he kind of percolates toward the top. Consistent ball striker, puts himself in position. Hard to win, right? Hard to trust to win. But does he kind of make up for not getting the job done last year? Probably should have won last year, to be honest. But didn't get the job done last year. Does he kind of come back from that and do well here this week? That's kind of up to you to decide in terms of top 10. Now, we publish the top 10 for free for everybody. If you want to become a Golf Newsnet member, you can head over to golfnewsnet.com, get the full field. We have all 140 players as we're recording this. We'll get 4 more from the Monday qualifier. But we'll have all relevant players to the field listed and ranked for the week, all the way from top to bottom, but you get the top 10 for free. Over golfnewsnet.com, join for $40 for a year, $60 for 2 years, or $80 for 3 years. And that includes, if you're a member already, you can tack on time to your membership and get those special rates available. We're going to wind up running it probably through January. It's done really well for us. So head over to golfnewsnet.com if you would like to check that out. There's so many tools available over at golfnewsnet.com. And one of them I want to highlight here in this episode. We're going to do a second episode this week talking about this tournament. We only did the one on the Century last week, but most weeks we're going to do 3 episodes. So one kind of going over the model and first clicks and all those types of things. Then a second episode digging a little bit deeper in the weeds and some value plays and some matchup plays. But I want to tease that a little bit as well for something we'll talk about in the second episode, which is first round leader bets. I know it's a market people love. It is a volatile market. It is really hard to win first round bets made pre-tournament. You might see something early on and catch it and get a worse number, but it's a fun market to have a sweat on a Thursday because you're placing an outright bet and you don't have any matchups. You really have nothing that gets resolved on Thursday or Friday in some cases. I'm not really a matchups guy. In terms of personal betting, I can evaluate them, but I really tend to look at first round leader bets as something more fun. Every once in a while you get something crazy and you get a big hit, and that's a lot of fun. A little bit more than getting a a minus 120 on a one-on-one matchup or something like that. So with that said, here's a look at the first round strokes gain leaders on average historically in this tournament. Players who in the Sony Open in Hawaii are gaining strokes in the first round in particular. These are guys to look for. Now, they have various amounts of rounds played here, total rounds played here. Maybe they played here twice. Maybe they played here 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 times. So those averages kind of change, right? But if you look at this group of players historically, you've got an interesting group. You got Taylor Montgomery, who opened his PGA Tour career playing great, did really, really well. Austin Eckroat's playing this week, has a good history of starting well here. Adam Svensson, good history of starting here. Matt McNeely starts here well, probably an interesting play. Maybe a Harry Hall is an interesting play for a first-round leader. Chris Kirk, Steven Yeager, I think, is going to get lost in the shuffle a little bit this week. I think he is an interesting play. I really like both Eric Cole and Ben Griffin for first-round leader plays. I thought Eric Cole was going to be a sneaky play at the Century. That turned out not to be the case, but I think he is an interesting play here this week to win. You're still getting a really good number on him compared to the field that he saw last week. I think it's a reasonable play to think about him as an each-way bet. Hard for him to win. He's got one. He's done it, right? But it's a little bit difficult to pick him to win because of not being at the same level he was a couple of years ago when he came out and just every week, felt like 30 weeks in a row, was just a tremendous, tremendous player in terms of 10s and 20s. You're not going to get that probably, but you might get him in a first-round leader situation. And then if that pays off, all your other action on him is good to go. So take a look at him. I think for a first-round leader play, I think that is worth a look this week. We'll talk about this a little bit more in depth on our second show of the week, but I want to kind of tease this out a little bit. I think it's an interesting play, and it's one of the tools that we have over at golfnewsnet.com. We don't have any other action this week, right? The Korn Ferry Tour gets underway on Sunday. We're going to be in the Bahamas actually for that. Going to be down there Friday and then play in the Pro-Am on Saturday, come home on Sunday. So we'll do the Amex preview shows like we normally do. We'll do this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday from here in the home base for GNN TV. We'll do that for next week. Again, tomorrow we'll talk a little bit more in depth about some sleeper picks, some players a little bit deeper down, talk about a couple matchup plays, maybe some 10 and 20, some derivative plays. Put all that together for you. We'll do 2 shows this week. In subsequent weeks, we'll do 2 shows around the PGA Tour event, and then a Wednesday show that will encapsulate everything else. We have the Team Cup on the DP World Tour this week. I don't really think that's anything worth betting on, and we won't have proper lines for the Korn Ferry Tour event until you get to the weekend. So we won't do a show about that for this week or next. They're both Sunday to Wednesday events to start the year on the Korn Ferry Tour. So watch for my socials if I want to give plays about those, but at least for the first couple of weeks, we won't touch on Korn Ferry Tour. And then before you know it, it's going to be LPGA season. We'll have the PGA Tour champions in Waialae. We'll be back up and running with 3, 4, 5 tournaments. Liv will be back before you know it every single week. So we'll dedicate a third show each every week to everything else, non-PGA Tour stuff. So hopefully you enjoy that. That's going to do it for us today on the show. Thanks so much for spending some time with me. I appreciate it. Again, back with another show tomorrow. We'll go over a little bit more in depth about everything happening this week at Waialae. If you have questions, get a hold of me, Ryan at thegolfnewsnet.com, on social media at Ryan Ballingy. Very much appreciate you watching. Join golfnewsnet.com for $40 a year. Get that special for $60 for 2 years or $80 for 3 years through the month of January. Talk to you soon. Thanks so much for watching.
Looking for excitement? Chumba Casino is here. Play anytime, play anywhere. Play on the train, play at the store, play at home, play when you're bored. Play today for your chance to win and get daily bonuses when you log in. So what are you waiting for? Don't delay. Chumba Casino is free to play.
Experience social gameplay like never before. Go to Chumba Casino right now to play hundreds of games, including online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Live the Chumba life at ChumbaCasino.com. VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
With New Year's resolutions, many of us will make a vow to eat healthier, and that's a good thing. But what about our beloved pets and their nutrition? Greetings, naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black here, and I'm on a mission to provide better nutrition for cats and dogs because truthfully, all pet food is dead food, which is why we created Rough Greens and Meow Greens in the first place. We bring their food back to life with live vitamins, minerals, probiotics, enzymes, omega oils, antioxidants, and so much more. All in a tasty formula that your dog and cat will love. You can improve your pet's coat, digestion, energy, and have less vet bills. Let 2025 bring a new year and a new pet. Get a Jumpstart trial bag, normally $20. Get a 100% discount with promo code BESTFRIEND. You discover the shipping. Go to roughgreens.com, use promo code BESTFRIEND. Bring your pet's food back to life with Rough Greens. So good, your pet will ask for it by name. With New Year's resolutions, many of us will make a vow to eat healthier, and that's a good thing. But what about our beloved pup and their nutrition? Greetings, I'm naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black, and at Rough Greens, we're on a mission to provide better nutrition for dogs because, truthfully, all dog food is dead food, which is why we created Rough Greens in the first place. We bring their dead food back to life with live vitamins, minerals, probiotics, enzymes, omega oils, antioxidants, and so much more. All with our tasty formula that dogs love. You can improve your dog's coat, digestion, and energy, and have less vet bills in 2025. Bring in a new year and a new pet. Get a Jumpstart trial bag, normally $20. Get a 100% discount with promo code RUFF. You discover the shipping. Bring your dog's food back to life. Get your free Jumpstart trial bag. Go to roughgreens.com. Use promo code RUFF. So good, your dog will ask for it by name. Rough Greens.